And go.
Hi, and welcome to another episode of It's Just Racing, hosted by Jim and Jim. I'm Jim.
And I'm Jim.
And we're here to talk about racing. Going to start off again this week with Supercross. Supercross was in Birmingham, Alabama. It was a Triple Crown, and the 250 East riders got to ride this week. What we'll do with the Triple Crown is I'll do all three 250 races and then all three 450 races instead of bouncing back and forth and getting all confused. In practice, before anything even started, Max Anstey, who was second in points, I believe he was 1 point behind. It was real darn close. He broke his left leg. I don't know why I said left. Doesn't matter which leg he broke. He's out for the season.
I mean, they showed us the replay enough times. I mean, it was a nasty looking crash.
It was definitely a broken leg. So that's a bummer to see for Max, and for Supercross. We just keep losing riders, it seems, almost every week. But on to racing, because the show must go on. 250, race 1. Seth Hammaker wasn't really aware of track conditions. They had just watered. They were the first race out there. It's kind of like an oval race, and you stay off the bottom because it gets sloppy. He didn't. He went too low in a turn, got stuck in the slop, laid it down, collected about half the field. It's just a big pile up there. So that wasn't a good way to start for Seth and everybody else that he took out. RJ Hampshire went on to win it. Tom Vial second, and Nate Thrasher finished third in race 1. Race 2, Hammaker didn't screw up this time. Got the whole shot, led start to finish. RJ Hampshire was second and Nate Thrasher third. And then in the third race, he did it again. Seth Hammaker, start to finish. Nate Thrasher was second and Tom Vial was third. Adding up all the points, Nate Thrasher gets the overall win with a third, and a second. Hampshire finished second and Tom Vial third. Hammaker was unable to overcome that first race crash. He finished 9th in the first race, and even though he won the second and third with the total points, he ended up 4th on the evening. With points, that keeps Tom Vial in the lead. RJ Hampshire to second, Seth Hammaker to third, and Max Anstey and Nate Thrasher are tied for 4th. But Anstey's kind of irrelevant now that he is out. Moving on to the 450s. Aaron Plessinger, he can start a race, can he?
He really can.
Can't finish him, but he can start him. Plessinger got the whole shot, led most of the race. Chase Sexton, his teammate, took the lead at about the 2-minute left mark. Sexton won it, Plessinger in second, and Malcolm Stewart finished third. In the second race for the 450s, who got the whole shot?
Cowboy.
Aaron Plessinger with the whole shot again. Sexton passed him again. Yay, teammate. Malcolm Stewart was fast. He got by him too, so it was a Sexton, Stewart, and Plessinger top 3 again, just in a different order. Race 3, Chase Sexton got the whole shot this time. Cooper Webb decided to show up and showed us what Cooper Webb's all about. Got by Sexton, won the race. So it was Cooper Webb first, Chase Sexton second, Malcolm Stewart once again third. So Sexton easily gets the overall with a first, and a second. Almost a perfect night for Sexton. He seems to have gotten mentally right during the week off. He did not make any mistakes, so that's good for him. Malcolm Stewart second, and Aaron Plessinger finishes the night third. So for points, Sexton ate a little bit into Cooper Webb's lead. Cooper Webb is still in the lead, 8 points ahead of Chase Sexton. Both of them with 3 wins. Ken Roxon's in third, 27 points back, and everybody else is irrelevant, barring a catastrophe.
Well, and Ken Roxon was riding injured now, isn't he? Something with his shoulder.
Yeah, he sprained his shoulder in practice last week, so I'd imagine it makes it hard to ride a bike.
Well, at least it looks like we'll have a two-rider battle for that championship.
As long as there's a fight for the lead, that's always good. One thing I did leave out with the 250s, um, Tom Vial, who is leading the points, is Mr. Consistency. He hasn't won a race yet. The second, third, fourth, and fifth have all won. But the leader hasn't won yet. He's just always there.
Well, he's kind of that kind of rider. I mean, he doesn't usually have the outright speed to go out and lead a race. He's good when it's wet. There haven't been any wet races this year, but he is pretty consistent.
And next week, Supercross is going to be in Seattle.
Now, before we get back to the pavement, I have an update on the WRC. You may remember that the rally drivers had written a letter to the FIA regarding the language policy.
A very official letter.
And their letter was ignored. But they didn't leave it at just that. The drivers, they all organized sort of as a way of protest for their next race, which was this past weekend in Kenya. They all decided that they would not be speaking to the media, or they would only speak in their native language. And so that was a thing to hopefully get the FIA to at least talk to them. And they followed through, and nobody talked to the media. If they did, they only said things in their native language, which is not what the FIA is looking for the media.
That's fun.
But after that, the FIA has agreed to talk with the teams about the rule. And they have a meeting this week because they'd like to get it resolved before the next round of the championship, which is in a couple weeks in the Canary Islands.
The Canary Islands.
Yep.
Now those weren't named after a bird, am I right?
I'm not sure. It's just racing, so.
Oh yeah, it's just birds, is it?
No.
All right, let's move on to some NASCAR. The trucks were in Miami. Everybody was in Miami. Miami Homestead Speedway. I love this track. The pavement's old. You got to ride the wall. It's a fun track, which means they'll probably pave it next year and take all the fun out of it. It eats tires. It's a good old track. I like it. But Corey Heim was on the pole. He's having a gosh darn heck of a year this year, I gotta say. Rough start. Well, not too bad actually. It was turn one, lap one. One of the rookies, Gio Ruggiero, spun. They were four wide. Really nothing he could do. Everybody was there, and he's the one who spun. Guy who got it worst was Ben Rhodes. Kind of wiped out Ben Rhodes' nose a little bit. They were both able to continue, but Rhodes finished 3 or 4 laps down, so it hurt him more than it hurt Gio. Some really good racing. Kyle Larson, Lane Riggs, Ross Chastain, they were all fast, swapping the lead back and forth. Some really, really good show they were putting on. Larson pulled away for a while, and then Corey Heim just must have been saving tires, came up, passed him, and Heim won the stage. Another great stage in stage 2. Corey Heim, Kyle Larson, Ty Majeski, all going back and forth battling. Heim won stage 2 also. And stage 3 was another good race. I love this track. Kyle Larson, he actually made a mistake. He overdrove it a little bit. He hit Lane Riggs as he was passing him for second with about 45 laps to go. They were both able to continue. It did bring out a caution because Larson did spin. Ross Chastain and Corey Heim swapped the lead back and forth a couple times. And then Heim started having some weird electrical issue. The truck would just shut off. He'd have to recycle it and it would start and he'd keep going. Then he'd take the lead back and then it'd shut off. Then he'd restart it and keep going. Happened multiple times. Lane Riggs finally got the lead for good, or so we thought, until 2 laps to go, and Kyle Larson, who I know I always complain that these people don't belong down there in the truck race. The only reason I was rooting for Kyle Larson, he won in the sprint car on Wednesday, the high limits race. That would have been a good 5 days, win 4 races in 5 days. So Kyle Larson did win the truck race. Lane Riggs second, and Corey Heim, even with his electrical issues, was still able to hang on and finish third.
And those electrical gremlins are the worst. I mean, his truck shut off, what was it, probably 6 or 7 times?
It was crazy, and he was fast, and all of a sudden he'd slow down, and then it refired, and bam, he was fast again. It was nuts. I don't know. Hopefully they get that figured out.
Moving halfway around the world from Miami, Formula One was in Shanghai for the Chinese Grand Prix. And this was another real late night race. I know you didn't stay up for it.
I did not. I watched it in the morning.
But hey, there was a sprint race. So we had extra racing. The sprint race, I think it was 17 laps. So a nice short race. Lewis Hamilton, he led every lap from pole position. It was really nice to see. His first, I don't know, are we counting it as a win or not? It was a sprint win.
I wouldn't call it a win.
His first good performance in the Ferrari, we'll say that. Tires, they were a big problem. They were graining. A lot of people were having trouble with their tires going away. You could see, the big stripes on the left front especially. It was making it pretty difficult to pass. Did you have anything with that?
No, not really. The tires did seem to clear up though. It's like they had to work through the initial graining process, and then they cleared up some.
It was really about who managed their tires the best. Lewis did a great job. He started pulling away at the end. He won comfortably from Oscar Piastri, and Max Verstappen rounded out the top 3. The midfield was very competitive, so that was good to see. And that carried on to the race, where Max Verstappen got a bad start. Both Ferraris got past him. He was down in like 6th place for a while.
Yeah, that was very uncharacteristic of Max.
I mean, you just have to think, what is that Red Bull really capable of? Because we have no idea. Because Max, he's still the best, and he's bringing it up towards the top. But then you contrast that with Liam Lawson, who's really struggling.
Could you imagine Max in a McLaren or a Ferrari?
He'd win by a minute.
It would be crazy. I know a lot of you don't like him. He's the best driver out there right now. And he's in crap equipment. The Red Bull is, it's inferior to the Mercedes, to the Ferrari, to the McLaren. Put Max in a Williams and he'd win. It's kind of sad what's happened to Red Bull. I don't know what it is. The car is undrivable when the best driver in the world can only manage a 3rd, 4th, 5th place finish with it, and his teammate is last.
Moving on to the race, I guess we'll talk more about Red Bull later.
Okay.
Fernando Alonso, he's had a rough start to the season. He retired with brake issues, so he is currently not classified in the championship because he has not finished a race yet.
So he does not exist.
Well, no, he shows up. He just doesn't have a number in front of his name. There are only 19 drivers who have been counted.
All right.
The hard tires were used a lot more in the race than they were in the sprint, and that seemed to solve the graining problem. The hard tires were really working well for a lot of people, so that was good to see that Pirelli brought a good tire for that.
I want to say the fastest lap of the race was set on hards also, wasn't it?
That wouldn't surprise me. I mean, it's hard to remember fastest lap now that you don't get your bonus point.
I suppose it doesn't mean it, but in NASCAR it does. I just find that hilarious that NASCAR decides, hey, we're going to start giving a point for fastest lap. And Formula One says, no more points for fastest lap. But we're still going to highlight it and show you who had the fastest lap, but you get no points.
Well, with the tires working better than expected, it did change a lot of team strategies. We came into the race thinking it would be a 2-stop for sure, and the Visa Cash App Racing Bulls, they two-stopped, and that call cost them a lot of points. Both of their cars were running in the points, and they were the only team who did the two-stopper, and they got stuck in traffic, and neither car was able to get back into the top 10.
And those two are looking fast this year.
Yeah, I mean, Yuki Tsunoda might be too fast. His car just broke on him just randomly. That front wing just collapsed.
That, if you didn't see that, folks, it was kind of funny. He's driving along, and the right front wing just blew. It just broke, and we all thought he had hit something. So they were showing replays, and he hadn't hit anything. It just broke. Maybe they didn't use enough rivets or super glue or whatever they do to hold on those flexible front wings. But yeah, he had to pit, and that ruined his race.
It was a mostly clean race. There was only one incident to note. Jack Doohan, I forget who he spun, but he was given a 10-second time penalty for causing a collision.
Yeah, they're being pretty rough on him. As if Alpine isn't being rough enough. 2 races in, he's already got 4 penalty points on his license.
Well, I mean, it was a justified penalty. In my opinion.
Was, but with the pressure that he's under, he's got to push it.
Well, at the highest level of motorsport, you have to expect pressure, but I hope
not the pressure that he's under. That's ridiculous.
The race ended.
It did, yes, it did.
There was some excitement at the end. Lando Norris was having some brake fade problems. It didn't seem too bad at first, but then the last 2 or 3 laps, he really had to lift a lot. He was losing, 3 seconds a lap. George Russell nearly got past him. One more lap and he would have, but Lando was able to hold on to that car. And so your finishing order on the podium, you had Oscar Piastri taking his first win of the season, Lando finishing second, and George rounding out the podium.
But wait, there's more.
Yes, the Ferraris finished 5th and 6th.
Hey, not bad.
Well, if you went to bed after the race was over, thinking
somebody did.
You would think, that was an alright day for Ferrari. And then you wake up in the morning and you hear they've been disqualified.
Both cars.
Both cars were disqualified, along with the Alpine of Pierre Gasly. Charles and Pierre, both of their cars, they were found to be underweight by, it was at least 1 kilogram, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. So that's significant.
It's really not.
Well, it's more than 2 pounds.
I understand. But with a one stop, now I'm not defending the lack of thought process from the team. When you do a one stop, you're wearing more rubber off the tires. And I guarantee you that that's where that 2 pounds came from.
Now, I'm not sure about that theory. I know
I am.
I know you take it from last year. George Russell was DQ'd from the win in Spa for that.
Oh, and he had a one-stopper, and I guarantee you he had 2 pounds of rubber missing too.
Well, the difference there is Spa's a very long track, and he didn't get the full cooldown lap to pick up that rubber, whereas here, both Ferraris were able to take that full lap to pick up any extra rubber. So they would have gotten as much as they could back on the tires, and so I don't think it was a tire problem. But Lewis, he was disqualified for a different reason. The skid block under the car was worn too much. So.
Now, weren't we talking about skid blocks?
We were.
The 24 hours of Daytona, about how stupid they are?
Well, that's one person's opinion.
My opinion is the skid blocks are stupid. Okay. Lewis's skid blocks were worn too far in the rear by a fraction of a millimeter, so he was disqualified.
That's the rule. Everybody else follows it. So.
Mm-hmm.
But anyways, those disqualifications promoted everyone below them up a spot. Notably, Esteban Ocon was given a 5th place finish. Ali Behrman was promoted to 8th. And Carlos Sainz got his first point of the season, finishing 10th. And so what that does, Williams is actually, they're tied with Ferrari, but they've got the tiebreaker. They're both on 17 points. I mean, I don't know how many of us would have thought that Williams would be ahead of Ferrari again in the standings. They are.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And so 9 of the 10 teams have scored points. And so Alpine is the only pointless team, as they would say, um, with 2 races in. It looks like it'll be a good fight for probably 5th through 8th in the constructors. That midfield is looking pretty competitive, and so I'm enjoying how the season has gone so far.
Well, McLaren's just going to run away with the Drivers' Championship and the Manufacturers' Championship. I think it's Oscar and Lando are just going to trade wins back and forth, and whoever wins the last week will win it all, barring any catastrophes.
And as a McLaren fan, I'd like to see that happen.
One other note, Eddie Jordan passed away last week, and that, for those of you who don't know, he used to be a Formula One owner. Very aggressive cancer, and it took him out pretty quick. He was only in his 70s, I believe.
Yeah, I think he's in his mid-70s.
And Aston Martin had a sticker tribute to him on their car, so that was nice. But rest in peace, Eddie Jordan.
And he gave a lot of drivers their start in Formula One, and he was always a character to have around the paddock, so he'll be missed.
Moving on to the Xfinity Series in Miami, Taylor Gray was on the pole. Carson Kvapil pulled out of line before the start line and had to serve a drive-through penalty, so a rough start to the race for him. Justin Allgaier had the lead by lap 8. Christian Eckes blew up on lap 17. He's having a rough start to his Xfinity career after some solid years in the trucks. By lap 26, Kyle Larson, who started 15th, was already up to the lead. Oh, could we have a sweep? There was an unnecessary caution when Chris Wright spun and kept going. Don't know why they threw it. NASCAR likes to throw cautions when things get strung out and people start getting lapped early, so I would assume that's what it's for. Justin Bonsignor spun with 8 to go. Not a big deal. I just mentioned it because he just delivered his wife's baby a few days before that in a McDonald's parking lot, so maybe he had other things on his mind. His hands were still slippery, who knows. But yeah, so Justin had a baby, but then he spun on the track. So a few guys stopped for tires, and it worked. Sammy Smith won the stage after being a non-factor, and the Sieg brothers finished 2nd and 3rd after also being non-factors. So nobody else pitted. Those guys did, and it worked. They got themselves some much-needed stage points because none of them are really having good years this year yet. Justin Allgaier got a penalty during the caution for driving through too many pit boxes. I can see how that can happen. In this case, I can't see how that can happen because the pit box directly behind him was empty, so it's not like he had to try to avoid anybody or anything. He just drove through too many pit boxes. So, mental mistake by Allgaier. Sam Mayer and Kyle Larson were dominant in the 3rd stage. They were really fast. And then guess who had some electrical issues?
Oh, it couldn't happen to him twice in 1 week, could it?
Deja vu. Corey Heim had to retire the car with electrical issues. That's crazy. Twice in less than 24 hours. Obviously different vehicles, Xfinity versus trucks, different everything, but still had electrical issues. So Kyle Larson dominated the stage. He led all the laps except the pit cycle. He had lapped up to 5th place.
Now that's the kind of racing I like to see.
It is. You like it when there's nothing going on, just fast guys passing slow guys. 8 laps to go. Tanner Gray spun. Caution. All right, everybody's all smushed up together again. And what happens? I don't know if Kyle Larson didn't get a good start. If Sam Mayer tried to get a better start than he should have. Anyway, he jacked up the rear end of Larson. Larson couldn't get going. Got loose. Didn't wreck or anything, but it was a gift for Justin Allgaier. Allgaier ended up winning the race. He was 20 seconds back when that caution flew for Tanner Gray. So the sweep would not happen for Kyle Larson. He would not win Wednesday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So that was the Xfinity race.
I caught the end of that one, and I can say you were pretty upset that Larson wouldn't get his chance at a sweep.
I just thought it'd be fun. Like, he didn't belong in that race either. I'm so strongly against it, but if you can win 4 races in 5 days, I kind of got to root for you.
Moving over to, what is it, California?
Yes.
IndyCar, they had their second race of the season at the Thermal Club.
The rich people playground?
And it was quite warm at the Thermal Club. It was over 90 degrees.
It was very thermal.
Yes. So he had a McLaren was starting out good. I mean, they were on pace to have a perfect day.
Wow, and you're a McLaren fan, aren't you?
I am. Pato O'Ward started on the pole, and his teammate Christian Lundgaard started right alongside him. But lap 1, there was some excitement towards the back. Devlin DeFrancesco, he spun Scott McLaughlin on lap 1. He got a drive-through penalty for that. McLaughlin wasn't happy. It was kind of confusing why DeFrancesco was making that sort of move on lap 1. As they say, you can't win a race on lap 1, but you can sure lose it.
You sure can.
But before the green flag even waved, Callum Ilott, he ran over his teammate, Robert Schwartzman.
Not as a human. He ran over his car.
Yes, he just drove right over the back of him, got airborne, had to pit to fix the damage. It was not a good look for Ilott to run into your teammate before the green flag. The race hasn't even started yet.
It sounds like something those Formula One Alpines would do last year.
No, they might have done that once or twice. But anyways, up at the front of the field, the McLarens, they were running away at the start. IndyCar, they've got the 2 different tire compounds. This week, the soft tires were working really well. We weren't sure how long they were going to last with the heat, but the McLarens were both on them to start, and they pulled out about a 10-second lead before anyone knew really what had happened. The first driver on the hard tires was Colton Herta, and he actually pitted before Pato O'Ward, so his hard tires did not last as long as the softs. And he was 22 seconds back when he pitted, and that really tipped everyone off that the soft tires were the way to go. Unfortunately, the McLarens, they only had, I think, 2 sets left to start the race, where most teams had 3. So they really needed to jump out to that early lead to make up for what they would lose at the end. But they did that. It was a mostly uneventful race. They ran
just like you like it.
Yep. They ran 1-2 for most of the time. We did lose TV coverage for about 10 laps, but it did come back right in time for things to get interesting. Before that happens, just one note: Scott McLaughlin, his hybrid unit overheated, and they spent like 4 laps in the pits trying to fix it. Eventually sent him back out, and he retired after being like 6 laps down.
I suppose if you're just driving a little 6-cylinder with no extra power on it, you're not going to last too long out there.
Coming up to the last pit stop, you can make it like 16 or 17 laps on a set of tires. Alex Palou was in 3rd place, and he was the only one with a chance at the win who had soft tires left. And so the McLarens, they really needed to pull away. And they had an 11-second lead over him coming into the final pit stop. But those soft tires, they were really fast. Pato O'Ward, just a note, he led 51 of the first 55 laps, the only 4 being during pit cycles. But he was no match for Alex Palou on new soft tires. Palou was able to cut that 11-second lead down to nothing in 5 laps and passed him easily, and then just ran away with the win. And so your finishing order: Palou got the win. He's won both races so far this year. O'Ward finished 2nd, and Lundgaard held on for 3rd place.
All right. Now let's hop back to NASCAR in Miami. And Alex Bowman was on pole. Ryan Blaney was bad fast all day. Took the lead. It's about 8 laps in and just drove away. Green flag pit stops. You missed them. We had to split up this weekend since Indy and NASCAR are too stupid to talk to each other and schedule things properly. Both races started at the exact same time. So he watched the Indy race, I watched the Cup race. Anyhow, Jim here is a big fan of green flag pit stops and strategy and all that stuff, and he missed it all the first time it actually happened. Christopher Bell, slight contact into the wall with about 10 laps to go in the first stage. Didn't look like much. He spun, but he was a non-factor the rest of the day. He was slow. Something must have got bent, but he was one expected to pull off a top 5, possibly even fight for the win, and he was a 25th place car or something. It just didn't work out after that. So that erased Ryan Blaney's 7-second lead. Everyone except Carson Hocevar stopped for tires. Little side note, Josh Berry hit Kyle Larson in the pits, not on purpose, obviously. There's some visible damage to Larson's left side, and hole ripped out of the rocker panel. It worked for Carson Hocevar, though. We'll talk about that in a second. Blaney won the stage. Hocevar did not pit at the end of the stage. So he only had 5 laps on his tires. Everybody else came in and got tires. He started off stage 2 in the lead and didn't hold on to it for long, but had a big pickup. He was running 34th before those cautions with Bell's spin, and it gained him probably a net of 28 positions, which he was able to hold on to for quite a while. Stage 2, Blaney was still flying. He was out. Only thing that slowed him down were lapped cars trying to navigate the traffic as he was picking them up and putting them down. That allowed Denny Hamlin, Kyle Larson, William Byron to catch him. Had some good racing there. Hamlin took the lead from him with 4 to go. Larson almost got him at the end of the stage. Hamlin held on. There was even some confusion with the graphic on the TV. It showed that Larson won, but Hamlin did hang on. They ran longer in the first stint, as they say in Formula One and all those other European deals. People started pitting with about 30 laps on their tires. Hamlin and Larson waited till about 40. So they had some slow laps, during the pit cycle, but they still had tires left at the end. So it was definitely a strategy that worked. Stage 3, Kyle Larson started off in the lead. Bubba Wallace took it right away. And then Hocevar had electrical problems.
I guess that's the theme of the week.
Yeah, he got him from Corey Heim since Corey Heim wasn't racing. But Hocevar was still up in the top 10 after that strategy call from the first stage. It's good to see him doing okay. And it's good to see strategy work out, because strategy often doesn't work out. But anyway, he was out with an electrical issue and his day was done. Ryan Blaney just grenaded a motor, running 3rd. He was still fast. It's a shame it's his 2nd motor this year in 5-6 races. Don't know if it's something he's doing, because none of the other Penske cars are blowing motors, but that's Ryan's 2nd. But
I had been checking the timing and scoring, and the NASCAR app gave me a fun fact that this is the first time in Ryan Blaney's career that he's had 3 consecutive DNFs. So I'm sure that's not a fun fact for him. But
I'm glad he wasn't watching.
Yep.
But yeah, he led 124 laps, and before that motor gave up. So that caused a caution because there was coolant and oil all over the place. Alex Bowman took the lead with 33 to go. Almost had it. He just couldn't ride the wall like Kyle Larson. He bounced it off the wall hard a couple times, which allowed Larson to catch him. Larson's closing up, and 6 laps to go. Kyle Larson took the lead and won. So Larson wins, Bowman second, Bubba Wallace hung on for third. So if you're counting, Kyle Larson won Wednesday night, won Friday night, and won Sunday, but could not win Saturday. 3 out of 4 ain't bad. Next week, all 3 series are in Martinsville for some short track action. I believe
Formula One has a week off.
Indy's off for 2 weeks. So we've got Supercross and NASCAR next week. If there's anything you want us to talk about, just let us know. Otherwise, we'll talk to you next week.